Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching me from. I welcome you to Gist TV. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for watching. If you are new here, kindly subscribe, like, and share this video. Today, I bring us breaking news from United Kingdom as the Queen of Elizabeth II passed on this afternoon and at Scotland, and it's so painful. May her soul rest in peace, even though she died at the age of 96 years old. Okay, so watch the clips attached to this video and let's say positive comments. Let's leave positive comments in the comment section. Okay, so thank you, and I leave you to watch the remaining clips on this video, and don't forget to join the DAP family. Cheers.
This is BBC News from London. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. In a statement, the palace said the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. BBC Television is broadcasting this special programme reporting the death of Her Majesty the Queen.
Queen, alone, in the royal pew at Philip's funeral. The loss of her husband was a time to reflect on their long time together, the moments of accomplishment and celebration, and the challenges overcome. Rarely displaying public emotion, she could be excused for perhaps feeling she had fulfilled the course she charted the day she was crowned. And satisfied, no doubt, that those who will follow her, Charles with his renewed popularity, William, who transcends tradition and youth, and the royal boy George will continue doing the job so ably carried out for so long by Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, what an extraordinary leader, what an extraordinary life. These are live shots now outside Buckingham Palace. Thousands, tens of thousands of people are making their way there to pay their respects. It is what, around quarter to eight London time right now. You can imagine that those crowds will only swell to larger numbers over the coming hours as people mourn the loss of Queen Elizabeth.
It was a little over an hour ago that the traditional announcement was placed on the palace gates, which was just before 4 a.m. our time that happened, which is all part of the tradition of what happens when the monarch passes. But by that point, there were already many, many people outside the gates because we knew from Queen Elizabeth's doctors that she had taken a turn and the family had made their way to Balmoral.
It's happened. I mean, we all saw her just a couple of days ago, right? And we all wondered if she was, she had a couple of marks on her hand. And there was speculation then that she may have not been in great health, but it was more mobility. So even though she's 96, it still came as a shock this morning when we found out, and that's only been...
That's the final photograph taken of the Queen there. That was when she was meeting the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, 2 days ago. So, I mean, I think when we saw that, as you said, we remarked on her hands, didn't we, that they were bruised. But she looked quite well, even though she was frail. She looked quite well in that picture. So, has obviously taken a turn sometime after that point.
So this has only happened in the last couple of hours, and already there has been a huge reaction around the world as the news of her passing fanned out across the globe. Also, just in the last few moments, Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, has released a fairly lengthy statement on her life. He says, with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, an historic reign and a long life devoted to duty, family, faith and service has come to an end. The government and the people of Australia offer our deepest condolences to the royal family, who are grieving for a beloved mother, grandmother and great-grandmother, the person whom for so long was their greatest inner strength.
Australian hearts go out to the people of the United Kingdom who mourn today, knowing they will feel they have lost part of what makes their nation whole. There is comfort to be found in Her Majesty's own words, grief is the price we pay for love. This is a loss we all feel, for few have known a world without Queen Elizabeth II. In her 7 remarkable decades on the throne, Her Majesty was a rare and reassuring constant amidst rapid change. Through the noise and tumult of the years, she embodied and exhibited a timeless decency and an enduring calm.
From the moment the young princess became queen, shouldering the mighty weight of the institution into which she was born, Her Majesty made dedication to duty and service above self the hallmark of her reign. She celebrated our good times. She stood with us in the bad. Happy and glorious, but steadfast too. In particular, we recall the sympathy and personal kindness she extended to Australians afflicted by tragedy and disaster. Throughout it all, she was a monarch who let her humanity show, performing her duty with fidelity, integrity and humour. In this, she was supported so long and so lovingly by the late Prince Philip, her strength and stay for 73 years. And from her famous first trip to Australia, the only reigning sovereign to ever visit, it was clear Her Majesty held a special place in her heart for Australia. 15 more tours before cheering crowds in every part of our country confirmed the special place she held in ours. As monarch for more than half the life of our federation, the relationship between Australia and Britain matured and evolved throughout Her Majesty's reign. The Queen greeted each and every change with understanding, good grace and an abiding faith in the Australian people's good judgment. This was the deft and diplomatic way she bound the diversity of the modern Commonwealth, nations around the world who will mourn her passing.
Today marks the end of an era, the close of the second Elizabethan age. This time of mourning will pass, but the deep respect and warm regard in which Australians always held Her Majesty will never fade. May she rest in eternal peace. That's the statement released in the past few moments by our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Those shots outside Buckingham Palace, I mean, they're just incredible, this support now that is growing there. This woman was loved, and it will be shown in the coming hours, the coming days, the coming weeks. A man who did love her too, Dickie Arbiter, worked with her as the Queen's press secretary from 1988 to 2000.
And he joins us now live from London. Dickie, I know it is a difficult day for everyone in the UK and around the world, and for you personally, you're very close.
It is difficult, but one's got to be pragmatic. The Queen was incredibly pragmatic. And it's interesting, isn't it? Prince Philip died on the 9th of April 2021. The Queen died today, the 9th of September 2022, 17 months later. I don't think she ever really recovered from the loss of Prince Philip. He was her liege man for 73 years. And when you've lived that long with somebody, depended on them, depended on each other, it was a tremendous loss. We saw this lonely figure sitting, because of social distancing during the COVID epidemic, of sitting alone at the time of his funeral. She did cut a lonely figure. We've seen her gradually unfortunately deteriorate, getting very frail, having mobility issues. And we saw that delightful picture a couple of days ago, 48 hours ago, of her meeting her 15th Prime Minister, Liz Truss. What a difference 48 hours makes.
Dickie, I wonder if you can shed any light on what just happened in the last couple of hours, and also just the process of what will be taking place behind closed doors. Let's start with just what happened, first of all, with who was around her as she passed.
Well, in the last few hours of her life, the doctors were there, and the statement was released just before lunch today, saying there were concerns for her health, and although she was comfortable, it was that triggered the family descending on Balmoral. King Charles III and Queen Camilla were really just down the road at Burke Hall, which is his Scottish home, given to him by his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who died in 2002. So he would have rushed there pretty quickly. The rest of the family would have headed towards Northolt Airport, just outside of London, boarded a plane to Aberdeen's Dice Airport, and then an hour's drive from there. What is quite interesting, and I find extraordinary, that Prince Harry wasn't on the same aircraft and making his own way there, and probably arrived, if indeed he has arrived, after the death of his grandmother, which is very sad in the circumstances. What will be happening now? Well, there is a very clear, laid out funeral plan. It was written years ago. When I was at Buckingham Palace from 1988 to 2000, I had a hand of rewriting some of it, sort of modernising it. And it would have been approved by late Queen Elizabeth II. So that'll be putting into operation by the Lord Chamberlain's office at Buckingham Palace. There will be, the next 24 hours, her coffin will stay at Balmoral in order to give estate workers and locals an opportunity of bidding farewell to their boss, after which it will then come down south to London and will probably go to either Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, the respective throne rooms, where it'll stay for about 3 or 4 days before moving to Westminster Hall for the lying in state, where the public will be able to file past and pay their respects before the 9th day, when the coffin will be taken to Westminster Abbey for the funeral service, and thence on to St George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, for the interment. So it's a very lengthy period, a very long period, and a very sad period when people will be able to express their emotions whatever way. I believe that Australians will be doing the same. She'll be sadly missed by Australians, by members of the Commonwealth. We've got to remember that her 21st birthday speech, if you remember that, I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to you and the great imperial family to which we all belong. Well, we don't have an imperial family anymore, but we certainly do have a Commonwealth family. And the statement that she made, the whole of her life, meant the whole of her life until she drew last breath. And she remained Queen Elizabeth II until she drew last breath this afternoon at Balmoral Castle.
Beautiful words, Dickie.
It's and just that emotion that you say, I mean, that will be felt right around the world. And I know it was her Jubilee celebrations. Even then, she signed off "Your servant," and that was her, wasn't it? Right, as you say, until her very last breath, it was about service to her country, and she was that one constant over 7 decades of extreme change, that stability, and people use words like steadfast to describe her, which are quite old-fashioned words, but that was her, wasn't it?
Ali, you've said it all. It was about duty. It was about continuity. It was about commitment to the people. Who can forget those words that she uttered during the start of the COVID pandemic on the 5th of April 2020, in which she said, and you said earlier on, we will see our friends again. We will see our families again. We will meet again. Very stoic, very much for the people, very much person who gave confidence to the people. They looked to her. When there was a time of celebration, they went to Buckingham Palace, they looked to her. When it was time of tragedy, they looked to her. And who can forget the Platinum Jubilee, the appearances on the balcony after trooping the colour. She didn't go to it, but she appeared on the balcony to a roar of spectators, all the way from Buckingham Palace, all the way up to Trafalgar Square, almost a quarter of a mile. And then the Platinum Jubilee itself, when she appeared on the balcony. And that wonderful sequence, you mentioned the opening of the Olympic Games and the sequence with James Bond, but something that overtook that completely was that wonderful sequence with Paddington Bear and the drumming on the cup and saucer to the beat of the drums, "We Will Rock You," that got picked up by the Royal Marines drummers outside the palace. She was a wonderful woman, and people will remember for her commitment, her duty, her love of people, her love of the Commonwealth, her love of Australia, of the realm states. Nobody can forget that, and nobody can take that away.
Well said again, Dickie. I wonder if you can also just elaborate a little on just how this all happens. Obviously, King Charles III is now the reigning monarch, but how does that happen after she passed, and what is the order of events there?
Well, there's a tradition. There were complaints, for example, at the time of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, there wasn't a flag flying at half-mast. Now, when Queen Victoria moved in there in 1837, the only flag that ever flew was the Royal Standard. And there was never any other flag. So when the sovereign wasn't in residence, the Royal Standard came down and the flag wasn't replaced. The sovereign never dies. We have the Queen's death today. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. When the King died in